There is a place in India where the government itself has put up a sign warning people not to enter before sunrise or after sunset. Not a superstition passed down through frightened villagers, not a rumor scrawled on a wall by someone trying to scare travelers away. An official notice, placed by the Archaeological Survey of India, one of the most respected government bodies in the country. That alone should make you pause, because governments do not put up signs about ghosts. They put up signs about danger. And in Bhangarh, it seems, the two are the same thing. Welcome to the most haunted place in India. Welcome to Bhangarh Fort. Bhangarh Fort rises from the dry, sun-scorched earth of the Alwar district in Rajasthan, sitting quietly at the edge of the Sariska Tiger Reserve. From a distance, it looks like any other ancient Rajput structure, grand, weathered, and proud against the desert sky. The kind of place that makes you reach for your camera and think about history lessons. But the closer you get, the more something feels different. The air changes. The sounds change. Even the light seems to behave differently around those old stone walls. Locals will tell you this without drama or exaggeration. They say it the way you might mention that a particular road floods in the monsoon, simply matter-of-factly, as if it is just one of those things that everyone already knows. The fort was built in 1573 by Raja Bhagwant Das, a powerful Rajput ruler of the Amber Kingdom. After his death, the territory passed to his younger son Madho Singh, who was not just a regional king but a trusted and celebrated general in the court of the great Mughal Emperor Akbar. Under Madho Singh's rule, Bhangarh was not a forgotten outpost on the edge of the desert. It was a living, breathing city. Estimates suggest that at its peak, Bhangarh was home to somewhere around 10,000 households. Think about what that means. Markets filled with merchants selling spices, cloth, and oil. Streets crowded with children and traders and priests. Temples where bells rang at dawn and incense curled into the morning air. Palaces where royalty walked through carved corridors and made decisions that shaped the region. Bhangarh was alive in every sense of the word. It had energy, culture, purpose, and people who loved it and called it home. And then, within the span of a few decades, all of that was gone. Every single person left, or died, or disappeared. The markets went quiet. The temples emptied. Palaces stood without anyone to walk their halls. The streets that had once echoed with the sounds of daily life fell completely, utterly silent. No war has been recorded that wiped out the population. No great flood swept through and erased the city. No earthquake swallowed it whole. The historical record, such as it is, offers no clean explanation for why tens of thousands of people simply stopped living in Bhangarh. The city was abandoned, and whatever the reason was, it was powerful enough to drive an entire civilization away from everything they had built, loved, and known. That mystery, more than anything else, is what gives Bhangarh its strange and enduring power over the imagination. When people try to explain what happened, they almost always end up telling one of two stories. These are not stories in the dismissive sense, the kind you brush aside as folklore invented to entertain tourists. These are deeply rooted legends that have been passed down through generations of Rajasthani families. It's told with the same seriousness that people bring to accounts of real historical events. The first story concerns a holy sage, a man of deep spiritual power and discipline named Balu Nath. Long before Raja Bhagwant Das decided to build his fort on that particular stretch of land, Balu Nath had already made it his home. He meditated there. He prayed there. That land was sacred to him in the most personal and profound way possible. When the king approached him and asked for permission to build, Balu Nath agreed. He was not an unreasonable man. He understood that kingdoms needed to be built and cities needed to grow. But he set one condition, and he said it clearly. The shadow of the royal palace, he said, must never fall upon his place of meditation. As long as that boundary was respected, the sage would be at peace, and the city would flourish. For a time, the agreement held. The city was built, and it thrived. Generations passed under the terms of that quiet understanding between the sacred and the secular. But ambition has a way of growing beyond its original borders, and eventually, a later king decided to build higher. Whether it was vanity, a desire to outshine his ancestors, or simply a failure to remember the old agreement, no one can say for certain. But the palace walls climbed upward, and one day, as the sun moved across the Rajasthan sky, The shadow of that great palace stretched out across the ground and fell directly upon the sage's sacred meditation spot. What happened next is described differently in different versions of the story, but the outcome is always the same. Balunath cursed the city. He declared that no roof would ever stand in Bhangarh, that the buildings would remain forever open to the sky. No home, no palace, no temple, no structure of any kind would be able to hold a roof above its walls within the boundaries of that cursed ground. And here's the thing that stops skeptics in their tracks. Every single structure inside Bhangarh Fort is, to this day, without a roof. Not one building has a ceiling. They all stand open to the sky, their walls intact, but their tops missing. As if someone came along and deliberately removed every roof in the city at the same moment. People have tried over the years to build roofs inside the fort's boundaries. Farmers seeking shelter, caretakers trying to make a space livable, curious people wanting to test the legend. The stories all end the same way. The roofs collapse. Every time, without exception. Whether you believe in curses or not, that is a fact that is very difficult to explain away with ordinary logic. The second legend is darker, more personal, and far more tragic. It is the story that people think of first when they hear the name Bhangarh. And it is the one that seems to carry the heaviest weight in the atmosphere of the place itself. At the time when Bhangarh was still a living city, there was a man who practiced what the people of that era called dark magic. His name was Singya, and he was a tantric sorcerer. A man who had spent his life pursuing forbidden knowledge and the kind of power that comes from it. Whatever he had gained through his years of practice, it was not enough to protect him from the most ordinary of human weaknesses. He fell obsessively, destructively in love with the Princess Ratnavati. Ratnavati was, by all accounts in the legend, extraordinarily beautiful. Not just in the way that all princesses in old stories are described as beautiful, but in a way that was apparently remarkable even by royal standards. Suitors sent their representatives from kingdoms far beyond Rajasthan. Poets wrote about her. Her name traveled through the region on the lips of merchants and travelers. She was, in the language of that time and place, a woman whose beauty was considered almost supernatural in its effect on those who saw her. And Singya, the sorcerer who lived on the edges of respectable society and dealt in shadows and secrets, came consumed by his desire for her. He was not foolish enough to think that a direct approach would work. A princess of Ratnavati's standing would never look twice at a tantric sorcerer, no matter how powerful he was. So he decided to use what he knew. He decided to use magic. He waited and watched, as obsessed people often do, looking for an opportunity. It came one day in the city market when he saw the princess's personal maid purchasing a bottle of fragrant oil on her mistress's behalf. Singya approached the oil and worked his darkest spell upon it. The enchantment he cast was designed so that the moment Princess Ratnavati touched the oil and applied it to her skin, she would fall completely and irresistibly under his influence. She would lose her own will, her own mind, her own heart, and she would follow him wherever he led, even if that path led to her destruction. But Ratnavati sensed that something was wrong. The stories do not explain exactly how she knew. Perhaps it was intuition. Perhaps she had her own knowledge of such things. Perhaps there was simply something in the quality of the oil, or in the nervous manner of her maid, that made her suspicious. Whatever the reason, when the oil was brought to her, she did not apply it to her skin. Instead, she took the bottle and poured its contents out onto a large boulder that sat nearby. What happened next is described with startling detail in the legend. The boulder began to move, slowly at first, then with gathering speed it rolled across the ground. Changing direction, as if guided by some invisible force, and it rolled directly toward Singya. He had no time to escape. The boulder crushed him completely. But even in his final moments, with what little life and power remained in him, Singya used his knowledge of dark arts one last time. He raised a curse against Bhangarh, declared that the city would be destroyed. Everyone living within its walls would die. And more than that, he cursed them to a fate that in the Hindu understanding of life and death is considered worse than death itself. He cursed them to die without achieving moksha, the liberation from the cycle of rebirth. He condemned them to be reborn again and again, endlessly, without peace, without progress, without the possibility of moving forward into whatever lies beyond this world. Their souls, he declared, would be trapped. Within a year of Singya's death, the Battle of Bhangarh took place. The historical details of that battle are murky, but the outcome is clear. Princess Ratnavati was killed. The city's population was decimated. And the spirit of Bhangarh, whatever it had been before, changed into something else entirely. The people of Rajasthan believe that the souls cursed by Singya are still there, still trapped within the fort's boundaries, still unable to leave, still unable to rest. And when you walk through Bhangarh in the hours before the guards ask you to leave, it is surprisingly easy to feel the weight of that belief pressing down on you from all sides. The paranormal reports connected to Bhangarh are numerous enough and consistent. Enough over enough generations to be genuinely unsettling, even if you approach them with complete skepticism. Visitors describe lights behaving strangely at dusk, brightening and dimming without explanation in the moments before darkness fully settles over the fort. People report hearing music, the kind of old classical music that would have been played in a Rajasthani court centuries ago, drifting from empty spaces where no musicians sit. Footsteps echo through corridors where no one walks. The sound of crying, sometimes soft and distant, sometimes startlingly close, has been reported so frequently by so many unconnected visitors that it has essentially become part of the expected experience of the place. There are reports of cameras and mobile phones malfunctioning inside the fort walls, losing charge suddenly, shutting off without reason, or producing photographs filled with inexplicable light or shadow. People describe physical sensations that come on without warning. A wave of dizziness so strong it forces them to stop walking. A sudden wave of nausea in areas where there is nothing that could cause it. It's a feeling of pressure, as if the air itself has become heavier, concentrated around certain doorways or corners of the fort. Some visitors describe the unmistakable scent of perfume or burning incense in places where no incense has been burned in centuries. Others describe seeing shadows that move with purpose, crossing open ground or slipping through doorways, that do not correspond to any physical person or object that could be casting them. Perhaps the most quietly disturbing detail of all is what people say about the animals. Birds, which can normally be found everywhere in rural Rajasthan, apparently do not fly over Bhangarh Fort. Local people make this observation casually, as though it is simply a known feature of the geography of the place. Like saying that a particular field floods in the rainy season, no birds fly over the fort, no animals will stay within its walls after dark. Dogs, which in Indian villages are famously unbothered by most human concerns, will not sleep inside Bhangarh. They circle the boundaries and walk away. What they sense, no one can say, but they sense something. There are those, of course, who approach all of this with the tools of rational inquiry and find more ordinary explanations. The roofless buildings, they say, are simply what happens when ancient structures are neglected for centuries in a harsh desert climate. Roofs are the most vulnerable part of any building, and without maintenance, they are always the first to go. The sudden abandonment of the city, they suggest, is most likely the result of a severe famine or epidemic in the late 17th century. It's a kind of catastrophe that was not uncommon in pre-modern India, and that could empty a city with terrifying speed. The official signboard placed by the Archaeological Survey of India, they argue with considerable reasonableness, is about structural safety, not supernatural danger. Ancient ruins are genuinely dangerous places after dark. Crumbling walls, unstable floors, and uneven ground in total darkness are real hazards that require real warnings. Scientists who study the relationship between physical environments and psychological states have pointed to the phenomenon of infrasound as a possible explanation for the feelings of dread and unease that so many people report at Bhangarh. Infrasound refers to sound waves that vibrate at frequencies below the threshold of human hearing. We cannot consciously hear them, but our bodies and brains respond to them in ways that can produce intense feelings of fear, sadness, disorientation, and the powerful sense that something invisible is present nearby. Ancient ruins, with their particular combinations of stone corridors, open spaces, and wind patterns, can act almost like instruments, generating infrasound in concentrated doses. It is a genuinely compelling explanation. And yet, even the most committed rationalist has to acknowledge that infrasound does not explain the smell of perfume in an empty room, or the sound of music in a space that has held only silence for 300 years, or the consistent refusal of animals to enter a place that, by any physical measure, should be no different from dozens of other ancient ruins across Rajasthan. There are stories of people who have pushed past the boundaries that common sense and official warnings establish around Bhangarh after dark. A group of young photographers who decided that getting nighttime images of the fort would be worth the risk reportedly abandoned their plan and left at speed within less than an hour of entering, and not one of them would speak clearly about what had changed their minds so completely and so quickly. A caretaker employed by the Archaeological Survey of India, who was once stationed at Bhangarh, lived on site for 1 year before formally requesting to be transferred to another post. He made the request without explanation and maintained his silence about his reasons for the rest of his life, as far as anyone who knew him could tell. The village of Golakabaz sits at a deliberate distance from the fort's outer walls. The people who live there are not, for the most part, as dramatic or excitable in the way that people sometimes imagine rural Indian communities to be when the subject of the supernatural comes up. They are farmers and laborers and shopkeepers living ordinary lives in a dry and beautiful part of the country. They do not gather in the evenings to trade ghost stories about Bhangarh. They do not perform rituals to keep the spirits away. They simply do not go near the fort after dark, and they do not allow their children to go near it either. When visitors ask them about it, they answer briefly and without embellishment. They say what needs to be said. Do not go there at night. That is all. Bhangarh Fort today draws enormous numbers of tourists, and during daylight hours, it is a genuinely magnificent place to spend time. The Rajasthan sun warms the old stone to a deep golden color in the afternoon light. The carvings on the temple walls are intricate and remarkably well preserved, displaying the skill and devotion of the craftsmen who created them centuries ago. The proportions of the palaces and gateways speak to a civilization that had genuine aesthetic sophistication. There are moments walking through the ruins in full daylight surrounded by other visitors, when it is easy to forget everything you have heard and simply admire what human beings built here so long ago. But the light shifts quickly in Rajasthan. The sun moves, the shadows lengthen, and the warmth begins to leave the stones. And when that happens, the Archaeological Survey of India guards begin their quiet rounds. They move through the ruins without urgency, without drama. They are not there to tell you stories. They are not there to discuss history or debate legends. They are simply there to make sure that when darkness comes, no one is still inside. They approach visitors with the calm, practiced courtesy of people doing a job they have done many times before. They do not explain. They do not justify. They simply tell you, politely and firmly, that it is time to go. Whether you believe in the curse of Balu Nath or the dark enchantment of Singya, whether you think the abandoned city is a testament to supernatural malevolence or simply to the brutal indifference of drought and disease and time, Bhangarh remains one of the genuinely mysterious places in the world. Not because the mystery is manufactured or performed for tourists, but because it is real. An entire city was built here, flourished here, and then stopped. The people left, or died, or disappeared, and they left no clear record of why. The buildings stand without roofs. The animals stay away. The silence is of a particular quality that is difficult to describe to anyone who has not stood inside those walls and felt it. Settle around them like something with weight and intention. The fort does not try to frighten you, does not need to. It simply exists in all its ancient, roofless, sun-warmed, shadow-filled reality. And when the guards come to tell you it is time to leave, you find, almost without exception, that you are ready to go. Not because you are afraid necessarily, but because some part of you, some instinct older than logic and quieter than conscious thought, has already decided that Bhangarh is not a place that belongs to the living after dark, and that some boundaries, whether they were drawn by a cursing sage or by 3 centuries of accumulated silence and mystery, are better respected than tested.